Hello guys, so this is the first session of the Umbrella Initiative. This is basically to help all the FOFA students understand a bit well about how things go on. So this is what we'll do in the first session. We'll first see what is an asset, what is a liability, what is a debtor, what is a creditor. After that, we'll move on to income statements, balance sheets. Further, we'll go on to the basic concepts of accounting like materialism, conservatism, actuarial concepts, etc. After that, we'll look into the different types of accounts. And in the end, we'll look into journal entries. Okay, so now we look into what is an asset. So basically, an asset is something that a company uses to generate future profits. Now, an asset can be divided into two types. First, tangible and intangible, and the second one, current and non-current. So what is a tangible asset? A tangible asset is anything that you can physically feel or something that physically exists. For example, plant, machinery, etc. An intangible asset is something like patents or goodwill that doesn't physically exist but that does have some value. Second classification is current and non-current assets. A current asset is something like inventory, something that is replenished within one operating cycle of the particular company. Non-current asset, something like plant or machinery or land, something that is not very frequently bought and sold, something the company uses for a very long duration of time. After that, we have liabilities. Liabilities, like assets, are again classified into current and non-current liabilities. Similarly, like current asset is something that is replenished within one operating cycle. Similar is the meaning of a current liability. Now, examples of current liabilities are trades payable, while on the other hand, example of non-current liabilities is something like a bank loan, which the company or the factory has taken for say 10 or 15 years of time. Okay, so now we look into debtors and creditors. So, to explain debtors and creditors well, we'll take an example. Say we have a company called VG.inc. This company will have certain customers. This company will also have certain suppliers. Now, we'll consider these two for this moment. Now say that VG.inc delivers goods to its customers in the month of January. And the customer gives its payments in the month of February. Now for the entire month of January, the customer is a debtor for VG.inc. Now we consider these two. Now consider that the supplier has supplied goods to VG.inc during the month of January and the payment is made by the company VG.inc to the supplier in the month of February. Now in this case, with the company's point of view, the supplier becomes its creditor because the company VG.inc owes money to the supplier which has not yet been paid. Now a very good example of a creditor is also long-term loans where the bank is a creditor for VG.inc. Okay, so now we are done with the first part about what are assets, liabilities, debtors and creditors. Now we move on to the second part, what is the income statement and the balance sheet. First, we'll look into what is the balance sheet. The balance sheet is nothing but the snapshot of a company at a particular date. Now, what the balance sheet says, what we have, what we owe, and how much is the equity capital. Okay, so now we look at the accounting equation. Okay, so now I've written something like A minus L equal to U. So what is A? A is nothing but the assets. And like I explained earlier, an asset is nothing but what the company owns. Now when you subtract from what the company owes, when you subtract what a company owes to others, you get nothing but the equity. So this is nothing but what the company owns. When you subtract what the company owes, you get nothing but the equity. Okay, now we look into what is an income statement. Now as we saw earlier, a balance sheet is a snapshot of a company at a particular date. An income statement is usually given over a period of time. Like suppose, say for the financial year 2013 to 2014. Or you can say from January to December of a particular year. So the basic difference is that number one, it is given over a duration of time. Now what goes into an income statement? So an income statement consists of revenues and expenses. Now when you subtract the revenues from your expenses, what you get is profits. So what we can say is that another implication is nothing but profits. Now all of these three are an integral part of your income statement. Okay, so now to understand income statement and balance sheet a bit more intuitively, we'll consider a small example. In this example, rather than jumping to a particular corporation, we'll jump to an individual. Okay. So now let's say, here we have an individual by name say Manaswini. Okay, so let's say that Manaswini earns something like rupees 10 lakhs per month. And let's say that she has a bank balance of say 100 crores. Now we look into something called flock measure and stock measure and flow measure. A flow measure is something like your income per month. It keeps on adding per month. While a stock measure is something like a store of wealth. Now you see the bank balance that she has is nothing but a stock. Okay. So had Manaswini been a corporation, her income, that is whatever she earns per month, would have become a part of her income statement. And the store of wealth that she has, that would have gone into nothing but the balance sheet. Okay, so now we look into the basic concepts of accounting. So first is the business entity concept. Suppose we have someone called as Manaswini. Now say Manaswini starts a small company. The company will have certain assets. The company will also have certain liabilities. Now what this concept says is that the assets and liabilities of Manaswini as an individual will be different from the assets and liabilities of the company that she has started. Okay, so let's say Manaswini's corporation takes a loan of 50 crore and after taking the loan, let's say that they are not able to pay back the loan. So when the bank comes, the bank has no right to go after Manaswini's personal assets. They can only go after assets that are owned by Manaswini's corporation. Now on the other hand, let's say that Manaswini is a gambler and let's say she gambles out all her money and loses say a crore or so. When that happens, whosoever she owes money, that individual cannot come after the assets owned by Manaswini Corporation. They only have the right to come after personal assets that are owned by Manaswini. Now we look into the concept of going concern. What the concept of going concern says is that suppose you start a corporation. Now that corporation is going to exist for an indefinite period of time. You cannot start a corporation and say that I'm going to end my corporation or dissolve my corporation after say 10 or 15 years of time. Unless and until the corporation is acquired or goes bankrupt, the existence of the corporation as an entity continues to stay. Okay, now we look into the money measurement concept. Now what this concept says is that only monetary transactions are to be recorded in the books of accounting. Now we'll see an example. Suppose tomorrow Warren Buffett comes to you and says, oh man, your company is very cool. It must be worth millions. So can you record that? Can you actually write it in your accounting books? The answer is no. Only transactions that involve money can be recorded in the books of accounting. Now next we look into three concepts at a time. The reason being that all of these three concepts explain more or less a similar thing. The first one is accrual concept. The second one, revenue recognition. And the third one, the realization concept. Now what these concepts say is that revenue, now we'll talk in context of revenue recognition. what it says is that revenue can only be recognized when a service is delivered. Now, let's say you have a company. Suppose that in the month of January, you sign a contract with some individual saying that you'll deliver goods in February. In January, you sign the contract. In February, the goods are delivered. And let's say in the month of March, your payment has been made. So, now what these three concepts say is, you cannot record the revenue here, you cannot record the revenue here, you can only record the revenue in the month of February. Even though your contract with the customer was signed in the month of January, even though the cash and payment was received in the month of March, you cannot record your revenue. You can only record your revenue at the time when your service was delivered or your goods were delivered. Okay, so an implication of these three rules is that your revenue is not equal to your cash received. As we saw earlier, the payment was received in the month of March, but we recognize revenue in the month of February. And your expense is also not equal to your cash paid. Okay, so now we look at the matching concept. Basically speaking, this concept is just jargon. Financial jargon that can be related to the earlier three concepts. So what the matching concept says is that revenues and expenses for a particular period must be matched. This is all the concept says, nothing more than that. Okay, so now we look into the concept of materiality. Have you ever wondered why income statements and financial results are not specified to the last paisa or to the last rupee? Now this is the principle or concept which underlies those consequences. What this principle says is, you need not specify all your expenses to the last penny. It only says that as far as you are not misleading your readers, you can specify whatever amount or the extent to which your amounts are accurate. As far as it is not misleading, you can specify it in thousands or lakhs. You need not specify it to the last rupee. Okay, so before I move forward, I just like to tell you one thing. Now, you might be thinking that we are going too fast, but the reason we are going fast is that there are a lot more concepts and examples later which actually require attention. This is all just jargon. You just need to know it and already understand what comes later. So now we look into the historical cost or the cost concept. Now what it says is that, let's take an example. Let's say you own a company. For that company you buy land, say in 2010. Suppose you bought the land for say 20 lakhs. Now, in your books at that time, in the year 2010, you have recorded the cost of land to be 20 lakhs. Now after let's say a few years, let's say in 2016, the price of that same piece of land is 2 crores. So in your accounting books, can you actually record this land at 2 crores? The answer to this question is no. You can only record the land at the price at which it was bought and not its market price. Now, this is a very important principle and this is applicable for all assets and not just land. It can be plant, it can be machinery, it can be anything of that sort. Okay, so now we look into the next concept, which is called as conservatism. What this concept says is that suppose there are two methods of valuation of a particular asset. Let's say you have a plant. I will not go into the various methods of valuation right now, that will be dealt into further lectures. But let's say there are two methods with which you can value a certain plant. Now, let's say the first method says that the value of the plant is say 20 crore. The next method says that the value of the plant is say 5 crore. Now, irrespective of which method you think is important or is relevant, you must always consider the value of the plant that is least among those two methods. Any number of methods you use, whatever is the least value of the plant or machinery that you get, that is which should be considered, and that method of valuation is the one which should be followed. Okay, so now we look into what are the various types of accounting methods. We'll not look into each and every type right now, we'll just look into two. The first one is accrual accounting and the other one is mark-to-market accounting. Now we will be referring to these two concepts at a very later time in the course. Just to give you an intuition or just to make you aware of what kind of concept exists, here is what. Now, a very good example or you can say that a very interesting fact about the mark-to-market method is a very big scandal called as the Enron scandal was based on this type of accounting, which is called as mark-to-market accounting. Now you can Google it, you will find all the leads, the investigation data, everything that you want about mark-to-market accounting. Just Google what is the Enron scandal and you will know more about mark-to-market accounting. But for the rest of the course, we only look into the accrual concepts of accounting. Okay, so now we are at the concluding part of this lecture. From the next lecture, we will look at something called as a dual entity concept. Now, we'll begin the next lecture with the dual entity concept and look more into how journal entries are made, what is the ledger, how to post into T accounts, what are T accounts, and all of that stuff. So from next lecture onwards, we'll actually look into the heavyweights of accounting. We'll actually start something substantial into the world of accounting. So that's all for this. Stay tuned for more.